I just pressed the let's go live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, we do have some serious business to attend to today, but we got to make sure the tubes are working, before we start rambling off all over the place before anybody's even here. It looks like it's working. That's tremendous. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I'm a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today we are talking about being exposed. We have two massive stories to dive into. Of course, Donald Trump under suspicion of being indicted any day now. Not today, and maybe not even tomorrow. In fact, they're saying we may not see anything until next week. People are asking themselves whether Alvin Bragg, the district attorney from New York City, is scared, if he's getting cold feet, if he's having a moment of sobriety, if he's realizing what he's about to do is a pretty dumb thing and changing course. We don't know. But there's more facts that are being revealed that makes his case look even weaker day by day. So today we'll go through, we'll get our bearings straight on what's going on. We're asking ourselves, where is Alvin? What's he up to? What's he doing? Asking Trump's lawyers, Alina Abba, what Trump is thinking about this and what the defense team is thinking about this. Well, what's going on? Alina Abba will bring some perspective on that. Paul Sperry also pointed out something very fun on Twitter. We'll look at that. Alvin Bragg's wife got involved in some retweets. You know how dangerous those can be. We'll also look at this letter that came out. So yesterday, some rumors that Cohen's lawyer actually sent a letter over to the FEC and communicated to them that they didn't use any of Trump's funds. Trump wasn't involved in this at all. And so we've got that letter that we'll go through in more detail. But FOIA fan at 15 pounds to go on Twitter, he dug up the entire FEC filing, right? The whole rest of the document. So the first document was filed in February. This was sort of the initial letter, but then they backed it up with some legal analysis, with a memo essentially saying, that first letter we sent back in February, yeah, we really meant it. Here's all of our legal basis for it. And so we'll go through that FEC filing as well. Pretty amazing. We'll also take a look at what Trump posted on Truth Social today, because apparently there's this letter from Stormy Daniels where she said there wasn't even an affair and she signed it. So it's just like every day that goes by, there's just less and less to this story. So is this indictment even going to happen? At least out of New York, we don't know. We'll go through all of it. Jim Jordan sent letters over to Alvin Bragg, or the Judiciary Committee out of the House sent letters over. And Alvin Bragg responded, and he was saying, I'm not going to be intimidated. We're doing everything lawfully and above board here. This isn't political at all. And so he responded, and the House is sending two letters back over to other people we've talked about here before, Mark Pomerantz, a former New York City prosecutor, and Carrie Dunny, another prosecutor. And these were the two guys who evidently resigned. Alvin Bragg sort of ran in a parallel type of style campaign to Letitia Tishy James. He was saying, we're going to go after Donald Trump and take over everything that Cyrus Vance was doing and all of these other things. He gets in, looks like there's no case here. And these two guys, Mark and Carrie, just had a little crying fit. And we'll play a clip of Mark just whining to 60 Minutes about, Trump's going to get away with it again. And then you can see exactly why the whole thing flipped over. They were not going to prosecute him, and then they did, because it's a political prosecution. So we'll listen to Jim Jordan. We'll also check in and see what's going on with the special counsel, because even though this New York City case might be coming to a little petering out, a little just, deflating whimper, special counsel seems like they are heating up big time. Mike Pence was called in, or his lawyers were called in. We're debating about whether Mike Pence can be subpoenaed into a grand jury for Jack Smith, and it's going to get spicy. So the New York City case might just be the calm before the storm, and we want to keep our eyes on the bigger picture as well. Now, sort of parallel to this, while everybody's being indicted, everybody except somebody called Ray Epps. Ray Epps is a little full of bravado out there today. He sent a letter over to Tucker Carlson, and he's saying, you better retract yourself, brother, or there's going to be a big problem here, and might sue him for defamation. So the Proud Boys are infested with confidential human sources. Donald Trump is being prosecuted by a bunch of partisan hacks all over the country. FBI is insurrecting who knows what now. And Ray Epps is feeling so big and full of bravado that he's going to send a letter to Tucker Carlson and say, you retract yourself, mister, or else. So we'll go through that. Then we're going to turn our attention over to the Proud Boys trial, because holy moly, today was a doozy. Now, we weren't in trial. Yesterday, when we left off the program, we know that there was a whopper of a motion that was filed by the defense. In particular, it was alleging, and I can't even believe this is the thing we're talking about, alleging that the prosecutors who were prosecuting the Proud Boys had a confidential human source who was in the Proud Boys, or a close related person, maybe a girlfriend or a related person within the Proud Boy circle, who was reporting back to the FBI as this case was pending, as the defense attorneys were working on this case, and this confidential human source was having conversations with the defense team while all of this was going on. All right, in other words, the DOJ prosecutors had a mole in the defense team. As insane as that sounds, and I know you're thinking, Rob, are you being dramatic here? You're pretty dramatic about the FBI. You call them, dorks with coloring books and stuff like that, which is true. I do. And they are dorks and they do have coloring books. But there is a little bit more seriousness to this. Are you kidding me? They're seriously implanting CHSs in close proximity or even direct proximity to the defense team. We're going to go through it. The defense filed a motion through Carmen Hernandez, and we'll take a look at that one. We covered it yesterday, but I want to start off there just so we have a nice, proper foundation. Then the government responded. Before they did, the media came out and they said, we want to be a part of this. Judge, can you please allow us to come in? So screeching in there, Huffington Post, ABC, CBS, New York Times, they all want to be a part of it, as do we, because there's a lot of explosion likely to come out of it. So the government did respond. The defense said, you're spying on us. You have a mole in our defense team. The government said, well, that's your own fault, essentially. We'll read through it. There's also a declaration from, I believe she's an FBI. Let me see who this person is. Yeah, FBI special agent. Okay, couldn't figure out what her title was. Special agent. Okay, so an FBI person named Kristina. She got out her coloring book and drafted up a declaration, and so we'll see what she had to say. Now, Roger Parloff was not there, and actually, I don't think the hearing was all that accessible. Brandi Butcgman was going to be filling in, doing a live thread from that area, so we'll check in with her and see what she has to say about it. But as you can see, my friends, it's a juicy one. Are you telling me that there are moles in defense teams, from the DOJ in this January 6 cases or in the Proud Boys cases? We already know that there were reports that there might be like 2-to-1 CHSs to Proud Boy defendants, at least. And this would just make it that much worse. And so we are going to get to all of that and more. And it's a lot to get to. So we need to make sure that we're properly energized before we dive into any of it. And the best way to do that is by going to fieldofgreens.com and using code Robert. Because as you know, we're all sick of all of those weight loss ads and fad diet pills and all of this stuff. But yes, we still do want to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds. But we've all seen these things and we know that a lot of them just don't work. But you know what does? Eating healthy, eating fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, you'll be healthier, you'll be more energized, and the weight just starts falling off. But vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, who's got time to prepare that every day? Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand that's backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look healthier and you're going to feel healthier, but the best news is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert when you check out so that you can save your 15%. The vegetables want to be eaten. You're going to be feeling great with your green energy bursting all over the place at the seams, and you're going to love it. Check it out, fieldofgreens.com, and don't forget to use code Robert. And so now, my friends, let's get right into it. The Trump indictment continues to stall. Is it delayed or is it dead? We don't know. But people are asking if Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, is running scared. Where is he? We don't even hear from him. And the grand jury seems like it has been delayed and delayed and delayed. Meanwhile, if you check the New York Manhattan District Attorney's office, you'll see here this morning, oh, they're doing a learning collaborative. That's very nice, is what they're posting on Twitter. You see all these people here, which is working on housing for formerly incarcerated individuals, which I support, which is neat. But we're also asking, Alvin, the whole country seems like it's kind of paused until you decide what to do on this thing. So can we expect an indictment anytime soon? Well, NBC News from New York says probably not. Planned grand jury meeting on Wednesday was called off abruptly. It's still not clear why. And while the grand jury was supposed to reconvene today, doesn't sound like it was about anything related to Trump. Unclear what the grand jury was going to discuss today, Thursday, if it wasn't Trump. Sources say the situation remains fluid, but as of 10 a.m. this morning, it was looking like the grand jury might not meet on Trump matters until Monday at the earliest. Monday at the earliest. So that means not even going to get an indictment on Friday. Bragg's office declined to comment, saying, we can't talk about grand jury matters. Now, these are always shrouded in secrecy, as they say. The world continues to wait. Why, though, did this all suddenly get delayed? It seemed like this was a pretty foregone conclusion. And people are turning around and saying, Trump elevated this. He blew this whole thing out of proportion. It's his fault. This was never going to come anyways. And I don't believe that for a minute. They were setting up barricades that the FBI were, stretching out. They were doing their hamstring stretches, getting ready to hurtle over during the next insurrection. And they were bracing for impact, right? It seemed like they were elevating this. They were leaking it all over the media. A bunch of different news sources got wind of it. And then suddenly, off the rails. What happened? Could it be the fact that Robert Costello, who we've talked about a lot here, came out and told the truth? Maybe. One person seems to think that might be the case, including Alina Abba. And so because she is such an insightful commentator and she has very, very keen legal knowledge, we're going to listen to her and see what she has to say about this most recent development. What's going on with these delays in the Trump grand jury indictment?
Alvin Bragg's office. What's happening with this case?
Well, my guess is, obviously, this isn't my case. I'm not a criminal attorney, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read the news and figure out what's going on here. I would assume that the grand jurors are getting frustrated, feeling perhaps like they're being lied to, and that they're not getting a full picture of what is going on, which is very typical for a corrupt system of justice that has Trump derangement syndrome, which is exactly what is going on here.
Exactly right. Lots of TDS in the House, and I think she's right about that. You don't really need to be a rocket scientist. They sounded like they were very excited about prosecuting him. They were all giddy and geared up over this. CNN's like, oh yeah, the walls are closing in. Mika and Joe Brzezinski, they were, throwing cocktail parties over there at MSNBC. And so we turn our attention now to what else could have been deviating a lot of the enthusiasm to prosecute Trump so quickly. Well, people are digging into this, and Paul Sperry, who is on Twitter at Paul Sperry _, he caught this one. He says, last March, Alvin Bragg's wife, Jamila, retweeted a report. For those of you not on Twitter, you got to be very careful with those retweets. Sometimes they can be illegal and bust you big time, like this one. And this is what she wrote. Finally, this is a retweet. Now, I retweet a bunch of stuff and doesn't mean I always endorse everything, but this one's curious, and keep in mind that the author of the retweet is not the wife, but she is retweeting it. And she says, so the wife's sitting there and she's like, oh gosh, I'm so bored. What a long day. Boring, boring, boring. She's on Twitter. Boring, boring. Ooh, I like this one. Retweet. Here's what it said. Finally, a bit of good news in the Manhattan DA criminal case against Donald Trump. What? The story claimed that her husband has Trump nailed on felonies. Oh, man. Jamila has since locked her Twitter account. Oh, bummer. So we're asking ourselves, what is Jamila doing with over there, retweeting this stuff? And that's kind of a condescending retweet, isn't it? Like, if that's your wife, and your wife's, she's kind of dunking on him on Twitter, is she not? Finally, a bit of good news. She's like, oh gosh, I hope he sees this retweet. She retweets it. Maybe he'll see it. Because they're probably having fights about this stuff at the dinner table at home. She's upset about it. Are you going to do anything? You never take the trash out here. You never help out. You used to take me out to dinner every night. And now it's only 5 nights a week. Are you going to prosecute him or not? I feel like we don't even talk anymore. And then so finally she's scrolling around, and she sees it. She's like, oh, perfect. And so his wife is kind of dunking on him out there. Wonder if he saw that. So has Trump nailed on the felonies? And she has since locked her Twitter account. Nobody wants to see that. She kind of hid that one under the covers. But then over here, this one from Joey Perez on Twitter, he got the screenshot. And so nothing is deleted. Internet lives forever. Here at Palmer Report is the report. This is what she actually retweeted. There's the retweet. Finally, a bit of good news in the Manhattan DA case against Donald Trump. She's like, yeah, finally, my idiot husband's been so lazy. Finally, retweet it. Finally. And so Joey Perez caught it and she goes, that's weird. Oh, these people are partisan hacks. You're not kidding. Yeah, it's totally true. They're all busted. And maybe the pressure is coming down to bear upon them. And it may just be, that they're sort of being exposed as partisan hacks. It could also be that the facts of their case are horrible and they're finally being called to light. One thing that came out very recently was this letter. Cohen sent a letter via his lawyer in a highly confidential memo over to the Federal Election Commission. And let's take a look at what this one looks like, because this seems to exonerate Trump completely. Remember, the base layer claim against Donald Trump is that he paid, or he directed to be paid, Stormy Daniels. He was involved in falsifying business records. It was for one purpose. He misclassified it, illegal. He did it with the intentionality of covering up or concealing a crime, and that elevates it from a misdemeanor into a felony and all these things. But if Trump wasn't involved in that, he doesn't check the boxes that justify any criminal charges. And that seems like it is lacking in this case. And the prosecutor, District Attorney Bragg, and his wife Jamila, they should evidently know this stuff, because they are, of course, he is at least the prosecutor. So this is the letter that was drafted back several years ago, February 8th, 2018, highly confidential. It is from an attorney at law called Stephen Ryan's office, signed by Stephen Ryan himself. And look who wrote that there. Counsel for Michael Cohen, Stephen M. Ryan, sincerely yours, writes the following. Dear Federal Election Commission, attention, Kristal. Dear Mr. Jordan, I'm writing on behalf of my client, Michael Cohen, in response to your letter. In a private transaction before the election, Mr. Cohen used his own personal funds to facilitate a payment of $130,000 to Stephanie Clifford Stormy. Neither the Trump organization nor the Trump campaign was a party to the transaction with Clifford, and neither reimbursed Mr. Cohen for the payment directly or indirectly. Contrary to the allegations in the complaint, which are entirely speculative, neither Mr. Cohen nor Essential Consultants made any in-kind contributions for Trump, nor any other presidential campaign committee. Mr. Cohen has not been a government employee at any moment, and the payment in question does not constitute a campaign contribution or an expenditure, and therefore, you, the FEC, you lack jurisdiction over this matter in the first place. The complaints have not and cannot present evidence to the contrary. Accordingly, the complaint should be dismissed. Thank you. So now Cohen is reversing that statement. He's, oh no, Trump did direct me and Trump did reimburse me, or whatever it is he's claiming. We don't even know exactly, because he's running his mouth off to the grand jurors and he changes his story all the time. The dude is a convicted perjurer. So who knows what he's even saying now? It's hard to even speculate on his statements because he's so all over the place. Forgets he even signed a waiver of attorney-client privilege, as we spoke about yesterday. So that's just the initial letter. And pay close attention to this date, February 8th, 2018. So this seems like it's kind of an initial letter. We follow letters through a sequence over a timeline here regularly. And this one was on the 8th. of February 2018. But that wasn't the end of it. They supported that. FEC sends a complaint. They say, whoa, we got a complaint? First of all, this was a private transaction. You don't even have jurisdiction over this. So your complaint should be dismissed. Don't even get the heck out of here, right? What are you doing? Get out of here. But the FEC probably said, no. How about no? We do have jurisdiction. We are the FEC. We hate Donald Trump. And at this moment, Michael Cohen is still sort of more closely aligned with him. And so we're going to come back and hit you harder. But the attorneys say, wait a minute. We are so assured of our position that this is not a Michael Cohen or this is not a Donald Trump involved transaction that we are going to be submitting a supplemental memo that you guys at the FEC can go through. Here's what it says. And look, this was received digitally signed on April 9th. So just a couple months after the original date. And you see here, April 6th looks like when it was drafted. So the same people, Stephen Ryan, another lawyer, right, same lawyer for Michael Cohen, says the following. It's an addendum. He's supplementing the original claim. And he's look, this is a lot more argumentative, right? He's citing authority and he's explaining the whole thing. And this is some highlights from this. He says, here's our response. Contrary to the allegations from you guys, the payment was private, was not political, was not made for the purpose of influencing the election, would have been made irrespective of Trump's candidacy. Had nothing to do with it. Accordingly, don't exert your resources on us. The payment was not, bold, italicized, not made in connection with Mr. Trump's campaign. Mr. Cohen has never been an agent or an employee of the Trump campaign. The payment was not made for the purpose of influencing the election, and so on. Goes through the laws, explains the FEC rules back to them, and gives us some old compare and contrast cases. They say this is a private transaction, was not for the campaign, and so on. Therefore, why don't you dismiss the complaint and close these matters? Done on behalf of Michael Cohen, signed and submitted back in April 2018. Now they're changing their story. It's all turning around. Isn't that interesting and convenient? Curious. So it's not just that. Cohen, obviously a liar. Obviously his attorneys are scratching their heads right now going, what the heck is he saying? What is he changing? This is all documented and it's now coming out. That might be why this case is not moving forward as well. But if that's true, why would Alvin Bragg bring a case this far without knowing this basic stuff? I mean, this stuff has been around since 2018. Everybody else knew it. Everybody else declined prosecution on this. So if he is sort of overlooking these major flaws in the case and still deciding that I'm going to move forward on this anyways, how is that not prosecutorial misconduct? How is that not crossing that threshold from investigating a potential crime and doing justice and turning it into a political campaign of harassment via the state government? We'll see. Now, there's more every day. It just continues to come out. Donald Trump posted this on True Social without any comment, just a link over to TMZ. And if you go over to the TMZ article will actually do a little signature comparison and they'll say, yeah, we think this is the same person. And they'll give you the details on that. But he posted that on True Social today. And this was a letter from Stormy Daniels showing that there was no affair. What on earth? Here's what it says. To whom it may concern. So let's pull this up. I think I have this here. Here. To whom this may concern, the official statement of Stormy Daniels, January 30th, 2018, before the Cohen letter to the FEC. Stormy says, to whom it may concern, over the past few weeks, I have been asked countless times to comment on reports of an alleged relationship I had with Donald Trump many, many, many years ago. The fact of the matter is that each party to this alleged affair denied its existence in 2006, 2011. Typo there. She was typing a little fast, 2 zeros. 2016, 2017, and now again in 2018. I am not denying this affair because I was paid, quote, hush money, as has been reported in overseas owned tabloids. I am denying this affair because it never happened. Oh. I will have no further comment on this matter. Please feel free to check me out on Instagram. Yeah, gosh, at the Stormy Daniels, if you're so inclined. Be very careful when you go over there. Thank you, Stormy Daniels. Oh man, doesn't that suck if you're a Democrat prosecutor called Alvin Bragg? That sucks, man. Bummer. Wow. Man, that like totally destroys your case, doesn't it, Alvy? Pretty terrible. All right, well, that stinks. So probably won't change anything. They'll continue to prosecute him because what do they care about the truth or reality? But look, you've got two people on both sides of the transaction now, poking holes in it every which way. Cohen and his lawyers, and multiple of them, we've got actual documentary evidence of this, saying that the transaction was conducted by Michael Cohen. We've got Robert Costello, another advisor. We spent some time on that yesterday, listening to him tell us the same thing. That Costello said Cohen orchestrated the whole thing, never at the behest of Trump. On the other side of the transaction, Stormy Daniels says we never even slept together. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. Now, doesn't that sort of eliminate a lot of the motive, a lot of the intent, a lot of the mens rea for Trump? I mean, my gosh, if there wasn't even an affair in the first place, why are they paying their $130,000? And if Trump didn't, did he owe her some other consulting fees or something? The story just deflates day by day by day, and Alvin Bragg is still nowhere to be seen. Now, we do hear a little bit from him because he is upset about Congress, not about his failing prosecutor's office. U.S. Congress and the Oversight and Judiciary committees have been upset with a lot of what they're seeing take place around the country, and they're responding with many letters. One of those letters went over to Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg, the DA, has been prosecuting Donald Trump, and one of the things that we've been asking ourselves is about jurisdiction and who has authority to prosecute Trump and how do these things work? If it's a misdemeanor case, they run out of the statute of limitations. If they turn it into a felony, it might extend the statute of limitations. We've got other different concepts between state crimes and federal crimes. We've got Georgia prosecution, New York prosecution, special counsel prosecution from the U.S. Department of Justice. A lot of complex overlaps. If you're Kamala Harris and you're Venn diagramming any of this, you're like, oh, this is crazy. She's probably cackling on the school bus with USB ports. But here is Jim Jordan explaining what he believes the jurisdiction is for Congress to send a letter over to the DA's office demanding to know more.
With elected officials here in Congress, there's been reports in the news that Democrats have been working with Bragg, pushing Bragg, helping Bragg in this direction. So that's something that we think is important to understand, not to mention the federal money and this interesting issue. This looks like it sprang out of the special counsel's investigation, the Mueller investigation. So we want to examine it for that reason as well. We may need to change the special counsel statute at some point. Who knows? But that's, I think, an important question we're asking also. We'll see what Mr. Bragg says. He's supposed to get back with us by tomorrow morning.
And he did. We did get a letter back from Alvin Bragg. But I had some questions about jurisdiction as well. I wanted to know what Congress thought their authority was. And you saw a couple of those things were pointed out by Jim Jordan. He mentioned special counsel, jurisdiction, same type of argument that we heard from a lot of the J6 committee. They said, well, we might have to pass legislation that talks about the transition of power. And so this gives us authority to go get Sebastian Gorka, for example, his text messages or whatever. So we have these continual debates, but we're asking if the Republicans are going to go sort of as far as the Democrats are. And it looks like they are using this tool to go and get answers. Now, the one question I always had was about election interference. I mean, Trump is the number one candidate for the Republican Party. Whether you like that or not, it seems to be the reality. DeSantis looked like he was coming up and he's sort of being knocked back down a little bit. And if that holds, you have the prosecution of a former president, but also the lead candidate for the next election. And as the Mexican president, AMLO, we heard from yesterday, he was mocking this openly, saying they tried to prosecute me to keep me off the ballot. And what they're doing there is just as reprehensible. So then when you juxtapose that with all of the other problems of the case that we just talked about with Cohen and all of the other factual inaccuracies, maybe even the idea that there wasn't even an affair. When it all comes together, the totality makes it feel like it's political and it is election interference. And if that was good enough for Liz Cheney and Kinzinger, it should be good enough for the Republicans. But that was Jordan. Now, Alvin Bragg did respond back over to Congress, and I wanted to run through that and see what he had to say about this. Did I pull this up? Don't know if I Sharpied this one up for us. So let's just get at it right now. Pull the red pen out, give it a little girth, and get right to it. Alvin Bragg, district attorney from New York, sent this letter back over to Congress on March 23rd. He said, "Hey, Jim Jordan and James Comer, I've got a message for you." He writes, "Hey, Congress, punks. The district attorney of New York is investigating allegations that Donald Trump violated our law. The investigation of one of thousands conducted by our office protecting New York." And I can't stand when they do this. They say that this is like the same thing as other things. They did this when they were raiding Mar-a-Lago. They said, "What are you talking about? The FBI investigates all sorts of people." And you say, "Oh, really? Former presidents? How many of those are they investigating right now?" It's not the same, but they try to do this thing where they're just like Merrick Garland. "We speak through our filings." Okay, well, your filings are against a former president. Can you comment on that? Because there's not a lot of precedent for this. "The investigation has been conducted consistently with our highest of standards." They say that we pledged that we would publicly state at the conclusion of our investigation whether we would be bringing charges, and if they are brought, it will be because of the law and the faithful execution of our office. I told you, they talk like this all the time. The prosecutors are the weirdest people, and it's hard to even read it because it's so full of pomp and rhetorical flourish. It's almost meaningless. They say, now we get to something that means something. "Your letter dated March 20th, in contrast," they say, "Jim, is an unprecedented inquiry into a pending local prosecution. The letter only came after Donald Trump created, listen, a false expectation that he would be arrested the next day, and his lawyers reportedly urged you to intervene." He's citing the New York Times. "Neither fact is a legitimate basis for a congressional inquiry," he says. Well, there were leaks from a bunch of different news entities. They got their sources that said this was happening. Your office didn't dispute that at the time. You guys, in fact, Alvin, were setting up barricades that the FBI was getting ready to leap over. So that's not Trump creating that. You guys didn't dispute it, and you said it was leaked all over the place. Multiple people were reporting it before Trump made that expectation, so you can't blame him for that. And of course, his lawyers are going to be demanding action on this thing because it's insane. In fact, many Democrats are also calling it insane. In New York, the district, maybe not insane, but they're questioning it. They're saying, is this our best case to bring here? Van Jones said this was a sobering moment for Alvin. In New York, the district attorney, they say, is a constitutional officer. We have responsibilities to do all of these things. As articulated below, more meaningless stuff. We offer meetings and we have rules under the law to prohibit public disclosure, so we can't talk about any of this stuff. These confidentiality provisions exist to protect the process. We do these things fairly and independently. This is a useless letter. It's useless. With regard to these pending investigations, Congress seems generally to have been respectful. They say that these letters are an unlawful incursion into New York's sovereignty. So he's flexing back a little bit. This is probably what they were doing yesterday, is what I was saying. I don't think that, they canceled their letter, so the grand jury proceedings, so that they could get together and smash all of the New York attorneys' heads together to come up with a letter like this. Congressional review usurps executive powers, and I actually agree with a lot of these on principle. I think that I don't want the federal government coming in and crapping all over what we're doing in the state. But as we have seen, the weaponization of the government has gotten to such an egregious point that the J6 committee was not even legally constituted, and they weaponized the whole stinking government against 1-6, which was the domestic 9/11, to then lay this blanket of domestic security over all of us and smother us all into oblivion. This case should never be brought. The Congress is doing the same thing that the J6 committee did, and they're investigating what they think is appropriate to investigate. And so this is the new reality we live in. Unfortunately, I wish we really didn't live in this current environment, but it's how it goes because we have partisan hacks who are thinking that using the levers of justice are legitimate ways of governing in the United States. It's the most insane development that we've got. But that's what's happening now. And it's because of people like Mark Pomerantz and people like Kerry Dunn, former New York prosecutors who have such a vendetta against Donald Trump. They've made it basically, in my opinion, their whole basis for existence. Here is one of them. This is Mark Pomerantz on 60 Minutes, very upset after Alvin Bragg won. Mark Pomerantz resigned in protest. You're not prosecuting Donald. I got to leave now. And he drafted a big resignation letter and then stormed out of there like a child. And he explained it to 60 Minutes, who elevated him because they say that this was a hero. This was a momentous moment where he resigned for principle. This is the type of prosecutor that was in New York, and this is the type of pressure that came down to bear upon Alvin Bragg. That's why he got cold feet. He wasn't going to prosecute. All of these people left, and Alvin said, uh-oh, I'm not going to get invited to the cocktail parties anymore. I bet Belt on Lies has nothing to do with the fact that he's Donald Trump. You know, these people don't wake up every morning in a cold sweat thinking about him because of the crimes, because of the bad loans. No, they're searching for some reason to smash him back down because that's just who they are. Now, we've got some other interesting letters that got filed or sent over by Congress to these people. Let's take a quick look at one of them. They're going to be more or less the same because I think they're going to two prosecutors who are both part of the office. Here's what it says. From Jim Jordan, chairman on the Judiciary Committee out of the House of Representatives, this letter, drafted March 22nd, sent over to Mark Pomerantz, the guy we just heard from. He was a former prosecutor, no longer there. Now he's over at the Free and Fair Litigation Group. The Congress sends this letter, they say to him, hey, Mark, apparently Alvin Bragg, your former boss, is about to engage in an unprecedented abuse of prosecutorial authority. The indictment of a former president of the United States and a declared candidate for that office. This indictment comes after years of the DA's office, when you were over there, pursuing charges, including by appointing you as an unpaid special assistant district attorney to lead the investigation into every facet of President Trump's finances. Last year, you resigned from the office over Bragg's initial reluctance to move forward with the charges, and you shamed Bragg in your resignation letter like a crybaby, which was subsequently leaked. And then suddenly, what happens? Alvin changes his mind and starts wanting to bring charges. So based on your unique role, Mark, in this matter, and your subsequent public statements prejudicing the impartiality of any prosecution, like we just heard, he's angry. And why are you so mad about Donald Trump? What did he do to you? Where did he touch you? Show us on the doll. We request your cooperation with our oversight of this politically motivated prosecutorial decision. He's so fired up about it that he was unpaid. He's like, I'm going to go dedicate my life to taking this dude down. Without any payment. The New York County District Attorney Office has been investigating Trump since at least 2018, weirdos, looking for some legal theory on which to bring charges. Wouldn't you be embarrassed with yourself if you worked on a project for 4 years and it turned into nothing? The facts surrounding like this, this is not a complicated thing. The facts surrounding the impending indictment have been known for years. Exactly. Michael Cohen, President Trump's former disgraced lawyer, pleaded guilty over 4 years ago to charges based on the same facts at issue in this indictment. And he's as biased as you guys are. By July 2019, however, federal prosecutors already looked at this, and they determined that no additional people would be charged alongside with Cohen. In January 2022, soon after Bragg took office, he expressed doubts about President Trump's case, and he suspended the investigation. And that's when guys like you, Mark Pomerantz, and Kerry Dunn, you guys threw a temper tantrum and you resigned. You penned a scathing resignation letter in which you baselessly accused President Trump of, quote, numerous felony violations. And you asserted it would be a grave failure of justice if Bragg did not pursue the charges. You urged Bragg to hold President Trump, quote, fully accountable for his crimes, like a scorned prosecutor. Weird, asserting that Bragg's decision will doom any future prospects for prosecution. Their whole lives are over. I think we read that letter here. I'd have to look it up, but very dramatic. Your resignation letter found its way to the New York Times. I wonder how that happened. Found its way. Yeah. Word for word, and your criticisms of Bragg's investigation were widely reported by the news outlets. Your unrelenting pursuit of Trump followed you into the private sector as you and Dunny, the other guy, formed your own law firm, quote, weighing ways to bar Trump from holding future office. So I see what happened here. These guys are getting into the lawfare game. They want to be like, little Mark Elias or something out there. They're like, yeah, we can go do this too. We're going to go be pals with Mark, and they're going to start like their democracy docket sister-in-law. And you see here, what is it called? Oh, the Free and Fair Litigation Group. Oh, that's really great. Nice job, guys. So they're going to go up against the democracy docket. Republicans better figure this stuff out, man. And there is big money being funneled into this. They formed literally a law firm dedicated to weighing ways to bar President Trump from holding office. Where are the Republican law firms that are dedicated? How many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars are being pumped into these organizations to go and just sit around all day and just weigh out ways and strategize to take out Trump? It's crazy. Just this month, you published a book excoriating Bragg. It's his life's work now for not aggressively prosecuting Trump, laying bare the office's internal deliberations about the investigation and your personal animus towards Trump. It now appears that your efforts to shame Bragg have worked, as he's reportedly resurrecting a so-called zombie case against Trump using a tenuous and untested legal theory. Even the Washington Post quoted legal expert as calling Bragg's actions unusual, and that's from the Washington Post. And prosecutors have repeatedly examined the long-established details, but decided not to pursue charges. In addition, your loser star witness, Michael Cohen, has serious credibility problems as a convicted perjurer and a serial fabricator with demonstrable prejudice against Trump, comparable to yours. Under these circumstances, there is no scenario in which Cohen could fairly be considered unbiased and credible. The interference and the inference from the totality of these facts is that Bragg's impending indictment is motivated by political calculations. The facts of this matter have not changed, not since 2018, and no new witnesses have emerged, no new evidence. The Justice Department already examined these facts in 2019, opted not to prosecute. But even still, according to reports, the investigation gained momentum this year after Bragg's office convened a new grand jury. The only intervening factor, the only thing that changed, President Trump announced he's running for president. You're kidding. Weird. So they say your actions, Alvin, both as a special prosecutor and since leaving the office, this is not to Alvin. This is to Mark. Your actions, Mark, as the special prosecutor, cast serious doubts on the administration of justice in a fair and impartial manner. Your words in the New York Times have unfairly disparaged President Trump, an innocent and uncharged man, by the way. And we often forget about that, about the presumption of innocence in this country. A very important concept to Western ideals and democracy in this world that often gets dumped on because the left doesn't like somebody. As a felon, you said that was a felon to millions of Times readers. Your book, again, unfairly disparaged him, now opens the door to examination about the DA's office commitment to even-handed justice. So in light of this unprecedented and overzealous partisan investigation, Mark, Congress has a keen interest in these facts to inform potential legislation to improve the functioning and the fairness of our justice system and to better delineate prosecutorial authority between feds and local officials. In addition, because this might come from Mueller's investigation, we also might consider some things there. And so accordingly, Mark, here's what we want from you. All of your communications from your time at the DA's office, all communications about President Trump, all documents relating to your role as the special assistant, and we want your testimony. And we'd like to have you over for a transcribed interview and some tea. This letter is a formal request to preserve all existing future and existing records. Oh, I love that. I love me a good preservation sentence. Anytime we can shove a preservation sentence in there, I love it. Hey, Mark, by the way, don't delete anything, just in case we might need that. We'll be around. You should construe this preservation notice as an instruction to take all reasonable steps to not destroy or alter anything, or else you're in big trouble, buddy boy, including your text messages, which is just outstanding. Because we know that Fishing Benny Thompson, Crying Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, they all were sending letters out hand over fist, like they were just at a typewriter, just all night, just sending letters out. Sean Hannity, Sebastian Gorka, a bunch of people on Twitter got them, and they wanted everything. They said, preserve it, preserve it, preserve it. The Republicans are doing it too. Sincerely, your friend, Chairman Jim Jordan. Perfect. Love it. All right. So that's good news. So that was one letter that went over to Pomerantz. Carrie Dunn got a very similar letter. Let's just take a quick look at it. I'm going to guess it's almost a copy and paste. Probably the same questions, more or less. So both of those, yeah, it is. It's actually even shorter. So, and they're talking a lot about Pomerantz. All right, so we'll leave that one there, but you can see, apparently these two guys both got a law firm together, worked together, became partners in formula or work at a law firm. And a big part of what they're intending to do is weigh the ways to stop Trump, according to the letter. So very fun. We'll see if there's other letters that get fired back or what these attorneys decide to do. We'll continue to follow that. But there is more, because even though it feels like the New York Manhattan investigation into Trump is sort of stalling out, petering out with a whimper, there is a lot more going on in the special counsel's office. Politico reports that Trump and Mike Pence are urging a judge to reject a bid to get Pence's testimony. You remember this guy, Jack Smith, is trying to get Mike Pence to come and testify. Attorneys for Trump and Mike Pence, they were both in federal court today outside of New York to fight efforts against Jack Smith. He wants to subpoena Mike Pence as part of the 2020 election investigation. 4 Trump lawyers were there: Evan Corcoran, Jim Trusty, John Rowley, and Tim Parlatore. Pence lawyers were there. They all want to stop this subpoena. They don't want Mike Pence to testify. Special counsel wants Pence's testimony about the weeks and months preceding the J6 attack, saying that rioters loyal to Trump forced Pence to flee, and they want his testimony to weigh in. Article says that it's an early test for District Judge James Boasberg. Took the gavel last week after his predecessor term expired, not the predecessor. The chief judge is tasked with overseeing all grand jury matters. Pence's fight to block the subpoena is not the only way the inquiry could have far-reaching constitutional consequences. A 3-judge Court of Appeals panel is going to rule on a separate issue. So, as you can see, a lot of stuff going on. And we'll keep our eye on that. But that was today. We don't know what the outcome of that was from Politico, but a lot of stuff going on. Also, a jury investigation, an investigation in Georgia taking place as well. About the only person who's not under federal investigation or the subject of subpoenas or the subject of transcribed interviews, well, there was one we read through here, is Ray Epps. Ray Epps continues to somehow escape any criminality. It's very curious, but he is feeling full of energy, full of bravado. He says, you know what? It's time I clear my name. Yes, I may have been the guy who was screaming into the Capitol, into the Capitol. He may have been there at the first breach. He may have been whispering into people's ears. He may have walked onto the Capitol property and all of these other things, including being there the night before and other sorts of violent activity like pushing flags into people and other things. But he's just roaming around free. And he's feeling so good, so full of gusto, that he's, in fact, demanding that Tucker Carlson issue a retraction. Here's what Ray Epps says, according to the New York Times. The man at the center of the conspiracy theory, what are you talking about? Demands a retraction from Fox. First of all, they should have used his name. We all know who he is now. A lawyer for Ray Epps has demanded that Tucker publicly apologize for false and defamatory statements, calling him a federal agent during the Capitol attack. Well, we've called him a Fed, but when we say Fed, it's this loose term, it sort of means that maybe he's not on the federal payroll, but it means that maybe he was a confidential human source or he was working with them. He didn't get charged after all, and people who were standing right next to him did. Ray Epps was on the FBI's most wanted list, and then he wasn't all of a sudden. Why is that? So they're calling it a conspiracy theory. I don't know what the conspiracy is. That I guess he's a paid federal informant. I don't think anybody's actually claiming that. But they sent a letter on Thursday. They said, Tucker, you're a bad person. We want a formal on-air apology for the lies that have been spread about Mr. Epps. They say the fanciful notions that Carlson advances on his show regarding Epps's involvement are demonstrably and already proven to be false. Letters are seeking retractions and apologies. They're preparing a defamation lawsuit. Mr. Epps' demands comes as Mr. Carlson and other top figures at Fox already under pressure from a $1.6 billion lawsuit. In a series of recent filings, Mr. Epps traveled to Washington and was videotaped urging people to go inside the Capitol. Yeah, that's true. There's no conspiracy about that. It's on video. He was also in the crowd moving past the barricades outside the building. That's what we're talking about too. Still, he became the face of a conspiracy theory. He showed up on the FBI's most wanted list. He was on, I think it was like number 16. He was one of the first ones through the breach. But then they go, oh, crap, that's one of ours. Delete that. The FBI agents with their coloring book, they opened up their Microsoft Paint and they got the eraser. Oh, get rid of Ray Epps there. So Mr. Carlson apparently featured Epps on his show. And we'll see what happens. Now, I'm excited to see what Tucker Carlson does with this. Hopefully he addresses it tonight. But that's about the only person who's not getting indicted. Of course, we'll continue to cover all of that. Trump, we'll see if there's anything new tomorrow on Friday, but it doesn't look like there will be. It may not happen until next week. If we even get an indictment, then we'll have to wait and see. But of course, we will continue to cover it. Now, we do have other indictments that are well underway. And this one is quite a breathtaking development. Proud Boys infiltrated not just the Proud Boys, but maybe even their defense team. This was an allegation that was put forward by the defense attorneys yesterday. Zachary Rehl and his defense attorney, Carmen Hernandez, filed a motion that was hard to even contemplate when we were reading through it yesterday. And I want to go through that briefly. It's short. Before we look at the media's reaction, because as soon as the defense filed this response alleging that the government had moles in the defense team, not in the Proud Boys, in the defense team, the media said, we have to be a part of this hearing. So we're going to take a quick look at their motion. Then the government responded. They said, well, there's an explanation for all of this, and we are totally innocent, and judge, don't worry about any of this. It's all fine. There's a declaration from the FBI agent who was involved in this communication. Her name is Kristina Spindel, and we'll get the latest from the court from Brandi, Butcgman. But to make sure that we've got our understanding on exactly the gravity of what's going on here, let's look at the motion from Zachary Rehl through his defense attorney, Carmen Hernandez. This was filed out of the DC court, and it's a corrected motion. It relates to a potential confidential human source and other witnesses that the FBI may have communicated with and other recordings that are in the FBI's possession. Here's what they're alleging. They say that on March 22nd, after the court proceedings were finished, the government stated that one of the witnesses that was on the defense list that they were going to use in their case, the defense says, we're going to call person X. They say, well, person X apparently, who was scheduled to appear the following day, had been serving as a confidential human source since April of last year, 2 years ago, 2021. April 2021, this whole case is pending. Proud Boys are already getting picked up. It's all working through the process. Defense attorneys start getting hired. We have pretrial proceedings. We're looking through discovery. Defense attorneys are meeting. Defense attorneys are having conversations with their clients. Go get, I need mitigation statements. Go get your girlfriend. Go talk to your teachers. Go talk to your counselors. Give me your priest. Give these letters. We need support. They start to rally the troops to support these guys. They don't know that in the whole operation, there's apparently a confidential human source sort of smoking around this for as far back as April 2021. Now, during this period of time, the CHS, this person, has been in contact by phone, by text messaging, and by other means with one or more lawyers for the defense and at least one defendant. During this period of time, the CHS, this person, also went to prayer meetings with members of one or more of the defendants' families. Now, we talk about safe environments in the law where attorneys and their clients can have protected conversations where we don't have to worry about the government agents infiltrating us. There's an appropriate place to go and investigate somebody for a crime, charge them with a crime, and then you leave them alone. You play the game fair. You don't put a mole in to go listen to what the other side is doing. It would be like in a sports game. It'd be like the NFL, playing a high school team, the DOJ versus a public defender. And then the NFL team sending in a physical trainer to go train the other high school team and then report back on the high school team. It's such an egregious imbalance of power, and it's such a grotesque violation of trust that it just baffles the mind that the prosecution or the government would even be contemplating allowing this to happen with a defense team. But there's another protected space we often talk a lot about, which is your religious environment, your church, your synagogue, the place where you pray and meet. You keep that sacred. You don't allow stuff to breach that space because it is a protected, sacred space, right? These are the types of things that we try to uphold, and you play fair. You don't invade those places. This government didn't do that in this case. After the case had already been charged, after it's already pending, they are still, the disgusting government, still using their confidential human sources and sending them into prayer members with the defendants and their families. The confidential human source also engaged in discussions with one of the defendant's family members about getting rid of a lawyer, replacing one of the attorneys on the case. Critical decisions. The FBI has human sources that are reporting on these things. And the defense doesn't even know the extent of this. Obviously, they got invaded by this person, infiltrated. They may not include all the communications that were even initiated or engaged by them. How do they know? So the allegations about the existence of yet one more previously undisclosed confidential human source, after various other alleged disclosures, demonstrate, Your Honor, there are reasons to doubt the veracity of this government and their explanations and their justifications for withholding any information about these CHSs in this case. Moreover, the government disclosed this information for the first time the day before the witness was scheduled to appear. We're in the middle of trial right now. So accordingly, Zach and the other defendants in this case respectfully request the court compel this government, these prosecutors, to disclose everything. We request an emergency hearing and an adjournment of these proceedings. So holy moly, right? You read that, you say, are you kidding me? The prosecutors are, after the crime is over, they're still trying to snoop on what the defense is doing? Explosive motion, explosive consequences, if true, you would think. So the media wanted to be a part of this, and here's what they said. Holy moly. They filed this 6-page. They said, Judge, can we please be here for this one? The March 23rd memo, look at all these people. CBS, Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post, LA Times, NPR, New York Times. We respectfully move the court to ensure the motions are open to the press and the public. The court has previously excluded members of the media from proceedings. And we filed this motion now. We want to assert our First Amendment to get in here. Capitol riot was important. All the defendants were important. The March 23rd hearing, they say, Judge, yesterday, the court converted today's proceedings, the ones that were supposed to go on today, into a motions hearing. The change was prompted by the motion that we just read, saying that there are CHSs embedded in the defense team. according to the motions, the defense learned that near the end of yesterday's trial proceedings. They were going to call a witness. They didn't realize it was a CHS. Uh-oh. And the court has, without prior notice, previously sealed hearings and excluded the press. Why would they do that? This court did not indicate previously that the November 14th hearing would be closed because this judge doesn't want anybody to see all of this stuff. And they say, we are the press. We have a right to come in here and be a part of this. So please let us in. Give us access on March 23rd. Sincerely, your friends in the press, Charles Tobin, attorneys for the government. Now, that got submitted, and the government responded to this today. And before we take a quick look at the response, let me just pull open the docket and see if there is anything new. I'm just sort of curious now if there's anything new that has hit the docket before we take a look at that. And the most recent filing, yeah, there is nothing else new on this. So this is the conclusion. We'll read through the rest of this and see what we've got. So the government did respond to the motion from Zachary and Carmen Hernandez, and let's take a look at what they say. Before we read the actual report, I want to go through this declaration. So we'll take them in turn. Here is the response. Government prosecutors respond to the allegation from Zachary Rehl and the request to compel the disclosure of the new evidence. The government prosecutors say, the U.S. respectfully responds to this. In his motion, Rehl moves for an order to compel the government to give us all reports, all recordings, all memoranda prepared by the FBI, the DOJ. They say, unfortunately, Zach's motion is moot because there are no reports, there are no recordings, and there are no memoranda. Oh. So they're asking for all of the recordings we have and all of the memos, but we don't have any, so we can't give them any. Defendant Rehl, they say, contends that his motion is based on, quote, serious and substantiated allegations of government conduct surrounding the surreptitious invasion and the interference of the defense team by the government through a CHS at the government's behest. The government responds, they say, this entire premise is baseless. As background, the government neither relied upon any evidence from nor referenced the CHS in question in its case in chief. You see how they're splitting this? They didn't deny that they have this CHS. They didn't deny that the CHS is embedded where the CHS is embedded. All they're saying is, we didn't use the evidence in our case, and we didn't reference the CHS in our case. And therefore, Judge, it's irrelevant. They're trying to draw a very narrow basis around this, a force field to sort of limit this. We didn't use it at all. It's a separate issue, so Judge, keep it out. They say it was only after counsel for Enrique Tarrio proffered on March 21st, 2023, that they intended to call this person, and two, that they intended to elicit evidence related to reporting that the CHS had provided to the FBI, that the CHS reporting became relevant and arguably discoverable. So you see this? They're saying that they had no obligation to disclose this source. They had a confidential human source that was talking with the defense attorneys, hanging out with the defendants as this case was progressing, and they didn't tell them at all. We don't know what they were reporting back to the government. These are the prosecutors admitting this, right? And they're saying, Judge, yeah, all of it's true, but we had no obligation to give it to them. Only recently, on March 21st, when they decided to call them and reference those topics, did we have any duty to disclose it? And they're referencing some case law. To give ride to the disclosure's obligation, the evidence materiality must be evident to a reasonable prosecutor. They say it's not reasonable. We weren't going to use this source. And my guess is they have so many confidential human sources. It's really gross. If we could ever figure out the total number of these confidential human sources, I would bet that they have at least 2 CHSs to charged Proud Boys, if not 3, if not 5. What do I mean by that? There are 5 Proud Boy defendants. How many confidential human sources in the close proximity of these Proud Boys, not even nationwide, in close proximity, let's say J6 Proud Boys, how many of those were CHSs relative to the 5 that were charged? Is it 2 to 1? Are there 10 CHSs to the 5 charged? Is it 1 to 1? Is it 5 to 1? I don't know. But there are apparently so many of them that one of them is friends, and whoever that person is going to prayer meetings and praying with them while reporting on them back to the FBI. Oh my gosh. What kind of a person? The prosecutor, or what kind of a pressure is being put on that person? Okay. What kind of disgusting leverage is the FBI putting down on that person that is forcing them to go into prayer meetings? That's forcing them to go in and sit down with defense attorneys. They are cheaters. They are cheaters through and through. They are just cheating. The DOJ, they are cheaters. They listen to emails and they say, you click the screen, therefore we get to see your entire playbook. They should be ashamed of themselves. Now, the prosecutor, they say, need not guess that evidence may become material as a consequence of the not yet revealed strategic decisions. They say, furthermore, it's only after the government disclosed the status as a CHS to the defense that the government learned from the defense that the CHS, according to them, had been in communication with their lawyers, that the CHS had participated in prayer meetings with them at one or more of their families' houses, and that the CHS had engaged in discussions with the family members about replacing the defense counsel. So the government just says, oh, we didn't know about it. Oh, we didn't know anything about it. So it's not our fault. They told us as soon as we had no obligation to disclose it because it's not relevant. We didn't use it. We didn't use it. We had no obligation to give it to them. We didn't know about it. So it's just a big list of excuses. They say, as set forth in the declaration by FBI Special Agent Kristina, which we'll read in a minute, the FBI never tasked the CHS with gathering any information on the defendants or their defense counsel. That's interesting. So the FBI never went into their little system and said, task due by Friday, go spy on them. Great. You never tasked them to do that, but she was just conveniently hanging out with them, showing up when invited to prayer meetings, showing up when invited to meetings with defense counsel. Can you feel how disgusting that is? Doesn't matter what you think about prosecutors or defense attorneys or criminals. Let's say you're sitting there with a family member or a son or something like that, and you are trying to figure out what to do, and your son's friend comes over, and they're sitting there with you, and you go, your friend's okay, and that person is in your prayers, is at your dinner table, after you've already been charged, when you're meeting with your defense attorney and they're reporting that back to the FBI, and the disgusting FBI and the disgusting prosecutors who are supporting them and standing up for this behavior are sitting there saying, yeah, well, we never asked them to do that. We never tasked them. This is very careful language. We never tasked them with gathering any information. So although the FBI was generally aware that the CHS was active in assisting defendants charged with crimes related to J6 on the Capitol, they knew about it and they allowed it to go on. Generally aware, but not specifically aware. So we didn't cross the line with the prayer group. We didn't cross the line with the attorney-client defendant conversation. They were just generally aware that they were floating around, including in assisting in fundraising efforts and protesting against their conditions. The FBI intentionally chose to never ask about her relationship, her relationship with defendant Enrique Tarrio or any other defendants or counsel in this matter. Wow, so you intentionally chose not to ask about it. That's great. Did she voluntarily tell you about it? Did this woman provide you information, even though you intentionally chose not to ask? Did you still get it? The CHS's nickname, but not true name, was included on the list of 87 potential witnesses provided by defense counsel to the government. The government learned at some point thereafter, right? And now at that moment, they should have told them about that, right? This should have never happened in the first place. There should have never been a CHS who was hanging out in prayer meetings or defense attorney meetings. Insane. But they don't care about it because they're the government. The government learned at some, but even if that was the case, after this person disclosed that name, that should have been disclosed to the defense immediately. Everybody on that list of 87 potential witnesses, any of those, if they are CHSs, they should be disclosed immediately upon receipt of about that. Otherwise, how can they possibly be your witnesses? They're not your witnesses. They're the government's witness. The government learned at some point thereafter that the individual had a relationship with the FBI. As discussed below, the CHS reporting requirement that the FBI did not appear on its face to pertain to those defendants. So they say, moreover, upon learning from the confidential human source that the CHS had participated in a deposition related to this case and had been subpoenaed as a defense witness in January, the FBI then promptly notified them that it was terminating the source relationship. January 2023. So this entire time, this case has been going on for years. They had a CHS embedded all the way up until January of this year. They say this is how gross this DOJ is, and they're standing up for the FBI, right? They're supporting this behavior. They're defending the FBI, so they're just as gross. They say that certain defendants or defense counsel chose to communicate with a CHS about matters related to this prosecution is a decision made by them. That's your government. They'll send CHSs into your prayer groups and into your attorney meetings, and they'll say it's your damn fault for allowing them in. And they'll take that data, anything that was shared with them, and they'll use it against you, and they won't even disclose it if they charge you with a crime. Not until 2 years later in January 2023. Rotten. They are all rotten. It's really shameful behavior. They should be ashamed of themselves. However, the government is in no way orchestrated such alleged voluntary interactions. Yes, you did. It was your confidential human source. You had awareness of it and you terminated it as soon as you knew about it. Uh-oh. January 2023, we're going to get in trouble for this. Then you terminated it because you knew it was a problem. It was a problem the whole time. You just got caught. Now, moreover, the government is still unaware of the nature and scope of any contact between the CHS and any of the defendants or their counsel. They say there has been no intrusion on the defense camp and no such records or recordings exist. So they just admitted to it outright through and through, but they're splicing the law on this, right? They're saying, first of all, Judge, it's not related to this case. It's totally voluntary. We didn't use any of the information in here in the first place. As soon as we knew about it, that it could be consequential, then we ended our relationship. They say that the defense made their own volitional basis for engaging with these people. We never asked them to do this stuff. They did it on their own. And a prosecutor has no duties to disclose this stuff until a certain point anyways. And the FBI that they are supporting through this person here named Kristina Spindel is going to give us some more details on this. They submitted this as a declaration. They write, I, Kristina Spindel, FBI agent, have personal knowledge of the facts and will testify to them if called to do so. I'm an FBI agent since 2014, been working in San Antonio for a long time. Now, I retained a person listed on the defense joint witness list as a confidential human source on April 19th, 2021. FBI agent after J6, they go and nab this person. I retained a person. This individual was previously known to FBI San Antonio and had on occasion provided information to the FBI starting in the fall of 2019. Some of this information pertained to her status as a victim. So now she's embedded with the Proud Boys or whomever for a long period of time, starting even as far back as 2019, officially as a CHS, officially April 19th. Proud Boys are arrested at that right around that time, and they start getting charged and prosecuted. Now, some of the information that CHS provided prior to being officially opened as a CHS related to J6. The information provided to J6 is documented in a 302. They think that that 302 has been produced to the defense. Does it say that she's a CHS in there? I'm guessing not. Some of the information that the CHS provided prior to being officially opened as a CHS did relate to 2 defendants in this matter. That was provided to the FBI in 2019 and did not pertain to their status as defendants in this matter. So these guys had these Proud Boys were so scrutinized. They had them all the way back in 2019, 2 of these defendants. 2019. So if they had all of these CHSs, if they had all of this information going back to 2019, they had Kenny Lizardo, we suspect is a CHS, who was picking up Enrique Tarrio from jail. They had this woman, this girl, whoever she is, who is also working with them, providing information about them all the way back to 2019. And the FBI couldn't stop them from almost insurrecting America? Are you serious right now? CHS was not tasked with collecting information on the defendants. Again, doesn't matter if she wasn't tasked. Did she collect it? FBI did not ask the CHS about knowledge. Again, I don't care if she was asked or not. Did you get it? Including Enrique Tarrio. The FBI did not become aware that she was identified as a defense witness until January 9th, 2023, when the CHS informed the FBI that the CHS had received a subpoena to testify and had already participated in a deposition. So the CHS informed the FBI, hey, guys, the defense is going to call me. Hey, they're going to call me. They got a subpoena. What are you going to do about this? The CHS had been snooping on the Proud Boys and their defense team for a while, or that's what I'm guessing happened, and then is providing that info over to the FBI. FBI then is using this person. We know that the defense previously disclosed already in December of 2022, according to their motion, CHS was in contact. It was disclosed to the court December 2022. They terminated the relationship January 9th. And not after the government, not because the defense disclosed it, because the CHS brought it up. So CHS was then terminated as a source shortly after the FBI became aware that she had been subpoenaed to testify in the matter. So the government prosecutors, they didn't adhere to their duty. They should have disclosed this a long time ago, back in December. Soon as the defense said, hey, we might call this person, they should have notified them at that moment. That's one of our CHSs at the latest, right? I think that they should have disclosed a whole bunch of who these CHSs are in general, because it is fair to know that if you're going to be calling witnesses and things like that. But I can understand their argument otherwise. But at least as December 2022, this should have been done, not January 9th, and not because the CHS told them. This was their responsibility, not the CHS's responsibility. What if the CHS didn't tell them? What if the CHS didn't tell them and the defense just called this person as a witness? They say this confidential source was never tasked to communicate with their lawyers or to gather any information. So they're trying to say, we didn't do it. She did it. The FBI was never provided information about any contact or communications that the CHS may have had with the defendants or their lawyers, nor was the FBI provided any specific information about any contact the CHS had with family members or the defendants, other than their generalized knowledge about assisting in fundraising efforts and petitioning against the conditions of their confinement. Forgive me if I don't believe you for a minute, not even a minute. Generalized knowledge about random things. We never got access to their defense strategy. We never got access to what they were talking about with their lawyers or their pastors or their family members in the confines of their home. No, just generalized knowledge. Nobody believes you at the FBI anymore. Nobody. I've spoken with the agents to whom this CHS was assigned. I've reviewed the official file. My review of the file and my discussion with law enforcement confirm that the CHS was never tasked with obtaining information from the defendants or their counsel, nor did they receive any such information regarding the defendants and their counsel. Now, the judge is probably going to use that to just paper over this whole thing. Oh, well, they never got anything bad from this person. This is a big scandal. And they're trying to blame this on, we didn't ask them to do anything. Man, if they get away with this, I'm going to be furious. We didn't ask them to do anything. So if they happen to do the things, we didn't ask them to do it. But if they did do it, we didn't receive the information that you think is problematic. So they're putting up a big fence here. They're saying, nope, has nothing to do with this case. There's nothing here at all. And I'm an FBI agent. I reviewed the file. There is no there is basically what this argument is. And it is blood boiling that they would try to excuse this behavior. This is our government. It is disgusting. Disgusting what they are doing. They justify it. Sending their snitches into private homes, into private relationships with pastors and with attorneys to try to get an advantage for their case, which they're basically creating out of thin air anyways. So Brandi Butcgman was there today. Says, I'm at the federal courthouse waiting to see if today's hearing is going to be open or sealed. Proud Boys were here. There was a motions hearing. All the defendants are in on the motion. Prosecutors have pushed back on the claim. The government has filed this response. We just read through it. Prosecutors argue what we just read. The hearing was not sealed, but I had to sit in the courtroom, so I couldn't live tweet it. Here's where things stand. 1, Kelly began today's motion hearing telling all of the parties that 1, we need to be focused on facts. Oh gosh, and not whatever our worst concerns may have been. So the judge is going to just paper over this whole thing. It sounds bad, he's saying. Holy crap. I know this sounds bad, everybody. I know it sounds like the FBI are a bunch of corrupt scumbags and the DOJ is trying to cover up for them, but let's just listen to the facts. And then he's going to go right back to that declaration from the FBI and just say, well, she said they didn't access it and we trust them. That's my prediction. Let's see. Judge Kelly wanted to use today to ensure we have Friday teed up for witnesses and take the evening to make sure the parties can represent their plans. Hernandez said that Rehl had no contact with this CHS agent that has caused the defense to file this motion. My client didn't talk to him at all. And Norm Pattis says same here. Our client wasn't involved with that either. It's really about Biggs's case. But defense says, still, Judge, look, I just want the court to get to the bottom of this so it doesn't come up again next week. Judge Kelly says, I understand your concern, but let's be clear here, okay? Your motion is presuming that information about this informant would have been discoverable to begin with had they all decided to call this person as a witness. And it's not obvious to me that that's the case, says the judge. Kelly says that she says Kelly's not making any insinuation the parties had done anything wrong, especially the government, that they'd done anything nefariously in this case. Okay, other than having a confidential human source at prayer groups. Nick Smith for Ethan Nordine told the court that he was told this person was a paid informant and there would be facts that Kelly should explore because, according to Smith, this informant had reported on 1/6 and what occurred at that time. Defense attorney says, well, in April 2022, our client received unsolicited requests to discuss this case. He said we had a constant drumbeat. Smith said he wasn't sure why the person was asking them to do this. Said we have contacts with J6 defendants in jail, and there's a lot of troubling suggestions about what's going on here. Judge says, yeah, I take your point, but it's not a coincidence this person was terminated when the government learned he was a witness. Smith is pushing back. Saying, Judge, we don't know how that ended. We don't know who requested this. We request that there's a sealed hearing to discuss this further. Judge says, well, I'm going to review the facts that are already under seal now, and then we'll come back to this tomorrow. Defense attorney Norm Pattis, he says, Judge, proceedings should be held back due to concerns with this witness. Pattis says, Judge, there's about 20 to 30 conversations between my client Biggs and some of that and this person. The communications between the attorney and client are sacrosanct, he says. You can't breach that. I don't want the trial to proceed. There are grievances here. The government called 3 to 4 case agents involved in this investigation, but there was no one in charge. And one of those agents testified, no one's in charge. He says, I've lost confidence in this process, Judge. Pattis told Judge Kelly, further suggesting they may call for sanctions. Wow, this is ridiculous. How can we do our job when they're telling us that we have CHSs in our office, maybe? The government saying it had nothing wrong, had done nothing wrong. And he says, that's a little too rich for my blood. Yeah, me too. Judge Kelly reiterated his earlier point. He says, look, I understand why the defense would react with concern. Look, I get it, guys. I get it. I wouldn't want a confidential human source in my prayer group or in my office listening in on my conversations with my clients either. But if there is an evidentiary hearing, it's not going to be open-ended about how the FBI handles their CHSs. It would only be about this one in this case. And he said there's also going to be a hearing on any possible attorney-client violations as well. Kelly says, hey, just like I told Carmen Hernandez, this presumes that the defense has a right to any confidential human source information. Why should you get any of that at all? What if your whole prayer group is a bunch of feds? Or your whole insurrection? But Kelly told Pattis, like he told Hernandez, it presumes the defense that you've got a right to that. So after some back and forth, Pattis says, I want the FBI to be audited. Me too. Shout out to Norm Pattis. Sabino Jaraguay for the defense, representing Enrique Tarrio. He says, hey, Judge Kelly, my team, when we learned about this, was in utter shock. Yeah, that's how I would feel. When informed that their witness was a confidential human source. I can't even imagine it, honestly. We call John Smith here to the stand. Oh, crap, that's one of ours, a confidential human source. Okay, well, we call Kimberly over here. That's another one of ours. Do we have any witnesses that are not confidential human sources here? And just as he began to lace into the government and rail against communism, he says, I'm from Cuba, Judge. Judge Kelly cut him off. Says, look, leave the Cuba thing alone. Mr. Jaraguay, Kelly said, stopping him real quick. Do you have any other facts to discuss? He said, Judge, my clients were prosecuted for assembling in a group. That's it. So the defense attorneys are just outraged. I can imagine they're just outraged in court. Kelly reminded him, he says, I know you guys are upset. I know it. I know. This is about two things right now, okay? Don't be upset about what the allegations are. Did anything untoward happen with this government, with this CHS, and this case? We want to know. Right? The judge is buying the government's claim here. Very narrow. No. This isn't a systemic thing. It's about one CHS who didn't do anything wrong. We didn't have any duties, and we didn't have to disclose anything anyways. Jaraguay tells Judge Kelly, he asked the government if the next two witnesses were also informants and said prosecutors wouldn't tell him. So he makes the same point. He's like, are the rest of my witnesses informants too? You know these people too? Were they also at dinner on Sunday night with my family and my kids? Prosecutor Erickson shook his head, says, no, vigorously, as Jaraguay made the claim. Yeah, no. They're not all in feds and informants. Nonetheless, Jaraguay said that they'd still plan to call this witness. Roger Roots, representing Pizzola, he jumps in. He says, can I speak, Judge? The government is crafting the defense's case for us. This is a significant intrusion, and calling it a significant intrusion, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Nayeeb Hassan chimes in for Enrique Tarrio, says, my team has been working with the government to stipulate what text messages would come in related to Tarrio's communications with members of law enforcement. Hassan says Tarrio may have one witness ready for tomorrow, maybe another witness ready on Monday. Hassan didn't say anything about whether Tarrio would testify. I would assume at this point it's increasingly unlikely, but it is the Proud Boys trial, so you never know. Hassan tells Judge Kelly he expects Tarrio's witness for tomorrow wouldn't take up the full day, probably short, 3 to 4 hours. Their other witnesses flying in on Sunday will be ready next week on Monday. Kelly said it would be fine if Tarrio's witness were called out of order, also depending on the line and how things shake out overnight. Says there are lingering motions, but they could rest, at least Tarrio could rest as soon as Monday. Trial could be done as soon as Monday. Carmen Hernandez stands up. She says, well, we could start with our witness on Monday once Tarrio rests. Hernandez tells the court, Your Honor, and for everybody here in the courtroom, just for the record, I have not and have never been a confidential human source. Snickers around the courtroom, chuckling. That's good. But now I don't even know anymore. I'm not sure about that. You don't trust anybody out there. Sort of like everybody's a Fed these days. Brandi Butcgman continues. She says, Dominic Pizzola's attorney, Stephen Metcalf, was aligned with Norm Pattis. He didn't want to go forward with trial until we got the details around the CHS's handled. Says, we're getting to the bottom of this one way or the other, but we're not about to freeze this trial in its tracks, says the judge. No, of course not. Pattis then told Kelly that he didn't know how he could agree to proceed, but Kelly wasn't convinced. I heard a deep sigh after Kelly responded, but couldn't see who it was, presumably Mr. Pattis. So Pattis is, Judge, we can't continue on this. How can we possibly continue when we don't even know what our witnesses are? We had our case prepared. We were going to call this witness. We disclose this. They say it's an informant. Our whole case is now deviated. How can we move forward with the rest of our witnesses? Judge says, well, you have to, because I said so. And so he lets out a big sigh. We also had the acting deputy chief, Denise Chung, who was there. She was very apologetic to the court, right? They brought out the big guns on that one. And I noticed that in this government response. You see this here? Denise Chung, see this? Chief Criminal Division. They don't ordinarily write these motions. Chief, Deputy Chief Criminal Division, Jennifer Blackwell. All right, these are two of the higher ups, the highest up. They recognize the severity of this claim. They understand, holy crap, we had CHSs in attorney meetings or in prayer meetings. Uh-oh. So they showed up. They didn't send this off to one of the peon prosecutors down there. They gave this to the big top dog, and they sent that over. And that's what Brandi tells us. She's there. She's very apologetic, says, I recognize the concerns, but there were 87 witnesses lined up by the defense, and we didn't know all of them. And until Tarrio's attorney enunciated the reasons for those witnesses, we couldn't discuss them. And so, maybe we were a little bit slow on this. We're super sorry about it. So she also asked for grace. Look at that. Also asked for grace with the government's late response to Rehl's motion, which was delayed today, saying the delay was caused by the government trying to get statements from their agents themselves. So they're scrambling around. They're calling all their FBI agents. Who did what? Who knows what anything about this? And Chung said the government did get a statement made under penalty of perjury, saying that the CHS did not contact the defense. Okay, did not contact them. Like, I want to know what these things mean, because they're very careful about this. Like, did the CHS contact them? I don't doubt that she didn't. I believe that she probably did not contact the defense attorneys. But I would guess that she was invited over and then she accepted those things. And so she was in contact with them, even though she didn't volitionally contact them affirmatively. Kelly says, I understand totally. Yeah, this matter has just arisen in the last 24 hours, and the government didn't make anyone wait that long. They were a little bit late on their motion. Kelly said it seemed to him that it didn't seem like anyone had information they shouldn't have, but wanted to give the parties through tomorrow to hash it out. Prosecutor McCullough says, I'm keeping a close eye on the order that Kelly issued earlier this month, establishing rules for how the trials must move forward. Says that we wanted a list of Tarrio's exhibits for the witnesses. Moving forward, the court wants the court to enforce its 36-hour rule. So before the witnesses testify, the judge, we read through the rules previously on this channel, said that you got to disclose your materials, turn in your homework, turn in your presentation before you present it, type of a thing. Says, we want that, Judge. They didn't do that. They're going to present a witness tomorrow. It's less than 24 hours tomorrow. And so where's the 36-hour rule? Says there are hundreds of pages in that we want. As McCullough was whining about this, he's like, oh, they didn't give us the 36 hours. Jerigwai for the defense, he's laughing. He's like, these friggin' jerks, they're embedding their agents in our private meetings. And now they're upset that we didn't give them our witness disclosures within the 36 hours. Like these are prosecutors through and through. Kelly thanked McCullough for pointing it out. And the assistant Jocelyn then provided the court with some additional info. Ballantine, this is another assistant U.S. attorney who is not on our list. So I think this is our 7th one now. Remember, we went through some of the prosecutors on this case. In fact, here they are. We did not have Ballantine on that list. So we now have Ballantine and we have Chung who are on this. So you can see all of the different prosecutors who were brought in to prosecute these Proud Boys who, threw a water bottle. This is where it continues. Ballantine said, we emailed the court the following information ex parte, meaning we didn't send this to the defense. We just emailed it right to you about the CHS. When they began, when they were terminated, when they were admonished, info on the time they were paid. The CHS was admonished. Wonder what that was for. Plus 3 source reports and 2 additional redacted reports, which she could provide unredacted. So the prosecutor sent the judge separately, not public, not anything we can see, not anything the defense attorneys can see, more information about this person. When they started, when they fired, when they were admonished, how much they got paid. Says we could provide 16 serials documenting the reports. We'll give you the details on it. Urge the defense to have its own report on what info it has, saying the judge can compare the two. Nick Smith says, Judge, tomorrow we're going to be done on our case. We're going to rest tomorrow. Then Tarrio can go. Then it will go to Rehl. Judge Kelly says, all right, you guys are back up tomorrow, but I've got a warning for you, for the defense. If the trial procedures that I laid out aren't followed next week and the witness is called without notice or without the agreed upon procedure, the defendant will be forced to rest. This case is so unbelievable. The prosecution is literally dumping new information on them day after day. We just learned that one of their witnesses is a CHS, and the judge is still beating up on the defense. Yeah, but if you still don't follow the rules, my 36-hour notice rule, then you're penalized for that. And you're going, you're feeding us a fire hose of new information, new discovery, new issues, new problems, all exacerbated and caused directly by the government. And they have to respond to all of that, right? It's a whole bunch of new work to deal with this sudden revelation of a CHS. And they also have, sort of no time, like no grace. The judge allowed the government to be late today, right? And then told I guess told the defense that, and he is giving the defense some grace because they are within the 36 hours. But next week, follow the rules. Hopefully the government doesn't dump any more CHSs on them. Hassan Furtario reassured Judge Kelly that we're prepared, and we believe we've been the most impacted defendant in this case. We've been the most damaged. Kelly says, nonetheless, there's no reason to pause the trial. Carmen Hernandez for the defense, she kept pushing. She told Judge Kelly, Judge, you don't have the defense's side. You don't understand what we're going through. Judge says, I know, I don't care. He says, there's no basis to pause this trial. There just isn't. We'll take it up after the one witness tomorrow. The defense is asking for more time. Pattis took a moment. He says, listen, Judge, we are so uncomfortable. Let me just clear this out, make a record here. I want to outline how uncomfortable we are with moving ahead. Kelly told him, he said, well, I know you're uncomfortable. If your worst fears come true, it's not going to change whether we go forward Friday or not. So just forget about it. And that does it for today from Brandi Butcgman. So make sure you're following her. The feed wasn't on, so she went into the courtroom and can't live tweet from there. So make sure you're giving her a good follow at Brandi Butcgman. She is a senior staff writer, and she's covering the Proud Boys trial and doing a great job. We appreciate her giving us the latest from inside the court. So that is the Proud Boys trial, my friend. Extremely, extremely frustrating that we're seeing this type of stuff come out. The government is apparently totally okay with their type of behavior. No real concerns about doing what they have done. Say, Judge, it's perfectly fine. We should just forget about it and just go right back to the trial. No harm, no foul, so they say. The defense, obviously, absolutely outraged about this, demanding more time, screaming from the rooftops. It sounds like the judge recognizes what a catastrophe this is, was even a little bit more accommodating today from what we read. I know you're upset, but let's just take this slow. The DOJ sent over their chief criminal officers to go and deal with this because it is a disaster. It's an egregious overstep. It really grosses me out as somebody who wants our justice system to function. I think that people in positions of power should know better. Even though they can do some of this stuff, maybe, and get away with it, they shouldn't do it. We ask them to be better than that. and they're obviously not. It's really disgusting, and it sort of breaks my heart in a way, but that's all right. We're going to continue to push forward on this and shine that big, beautiful spotlight down upon these injustices. And the more people who are awakened to these gross behaviors, the better. And eventually there will be a time where this stops, because the right people will be in charge and we'll be able to reform this in a way that is in alignment with actual justice. Until that day happens, my friends, thank you for joining us as we cover this and more. Thank you for subscribing here. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for sharing it with a friend or family member, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, that was some serious coverage on some serious issues today. The Proud Boys infiltrated by the U.S. government. They're basically acknowledging it. And it's not just the Proud Boys, it's their defense attorneys teams as well. We also saw that there was some updates in the Trump case. Special counsel still digging in. Ray Epps sending letters demanding Tucker respond and apologize. House Judiciary getting answers or getting letters sent out. Michael Cohen, still a liar. Alina Abba, still Alina Abba. And of course, that is it for us on the day. And so now, my friends, let's hear from you and see what you have to say about this. Let's check in on some of those super chats. I thought I saw Johnny's in the house today. Oh boy, Johnny's in the house. And somebody sent me an email yesterday telling us that Johnny, the rascally dog, was a criminal scamp, which was a very interesting phrase that I had not heard in a long time, which I think is a bad word kind of a thing, huh? Here, this one came in from Fred Petamonte. Says, speaking of that, he says, Rob, Johnny said, I called Braggs on Sunday. Alvin Bragg's from New York. He says, I said, Alvin, it's over. That's enough. Drop this now, or I'll have to talk about your time on Little St. James. Uh-oh. So that explains it. That's the whole story. We were asking why, why Alvin Bragg got a little bit squeamish on this. And it's because evidently he was hanging out with Epstein on Epstein's island. And Johnny has the whole island wired up, all the cameras and stuff. It wasn't Epstein. It was Johnny. Johnny's spying on Bill Gates and, all of the other people who were there. And he also has the goods on Alvin Bragg. So shout out to Johnny. Johnny solves problems sometimes. Good to see you. And thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Fred. Chris says, these walls have been closing in for quite some time now. Should be any day now. This time, though, right? They're getting really, really, they got to be tired of this. I mean, you got to be tired of it. How long has it been? It was Russia. It was collusion. It was Mueller. It was J6, first impeachment, second impeachment, on and on and on and on again. Nothing. You'd think they'd have something better to do. It's like, move on. Your project here is done. Find something else to wake up and hyperventilate about every day. Sheesh. Eddie Oliver's in the house, says Ray Epps wrote a strongly worded letter. Jim Jordan wrote a strongly worded letter. Sometimes you say things that make me sad, Rob. I'm going to write you a strongly worded postcard and or tweet. Well, you know me, Eddie. I do like strongly worded letters. We sort of like to read through them here, and I'm into it. I'll just tell you, I'm into the strongly worded letters. I like to write them. I like to receive them. They're exciting. You never know what's going to be in them. So if you want to send a postcard or a tweet, send it my way, Eddie. I'll probably send a strongly worded one back. We'll have to see how that goes. But letter writing, yeah, that's basically what Congress does. I'm not sure what else they do other than write letters and talk. They just sit around and talk. Here, Alien Guru says, we are living in biblical times. Is King Cyrus. There's a lot of that talk, right? Somebody asked what chapter of Revelation we're in. What stage are we in? I'm not sure. Hopefully none of that. Hey, Dolphin fan says, so frustrating. Feeling bad for the defendants. It's extremely disappointing that this is what we're dealing with. They're still in custody. We heard from Zachary Rehl. He's got a 2-year-old daughter that he's not seen because he's been in custody this entire time for a nonviolent offense. Zachary Rehl, by the way, nonviolent completely. And Carmen Hernandez made that point many, many times. So that, my friends, was it for our friends over on Rumble. I'm sorry, over on YouTube. Thank you to everybody over there. Let's see who's over on Rumble and what's going on over there. Eric Scorpio's in the house. We've got Fairy Dance says, woohoo, I made it. I'm glad you made it over there. Mama Cerie, Scott Tix is in the house. Nick Danger III, Donut Mind Me, Jacob Castro. We have ASS, the letter 0, in the house as well. Peter Tag says, thanks, Rob. Dog Digger, Eric Scorpio. Eddie Hernandez says, the problem is that the bad guys created a fourth branch, throwing off the balance of powers. No one regulates them, which makes the balance of powers moot. The realest truth is in there. Fairy Dance says, hey, Rob. Thanks, Rod. You're welcome, Fairy. Thanks, Rod. I've been called Rod a lot. Rod? No, Rob. Rod? Yeah, Rod's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Be safe, everybody. Brian C. says, the judicial branch shouldn't be allowed to regulate themselves, needs a separate system, so judges and pros like this can't keep getting away with this. You know, I think that some openness on a lot of this would help a lot. You know, if we could see inside the court, if they could open this up and you know, we could have video, if we could have transcriptions, if we could put this all on display, I think a lot more people would be demanding change and be demanding improvement. However, don't think that's coming anytime soon. And so the best thing that we can do is say thank you to people like Roger Parloff and other people who are in the courts and helping us connect what's happening here. We need to see more of it so that we can address it. Hey, we had some very nice tips come in over on Locals. And so let's say hello to our friends on Locals before we go over to our members only after party. Who is over here? Kelly Salnow sent a nice one in. Let's see here. Says, now where'd that go? I'm trying to increase the size of this so we can read it on the screen. But it's not looking very nice. Kelly Salnow. Kelly, thank you for that. Very generous tip. Says, before Rittenhouse, I thought I was pretty tuned in with politics and culture. I knew mainstream media was corrupt. TDS was in full swing but controllable. But then I found you, and boy, was I wrong about a lot of things. Looking back, I was absolutely fleeced by the narratives presented. G-Gum made a comment this morning that really hit me about clearing the noise out of our life. And in these crazy times, I'm thankful for true and honest voices like yours. Thank you. What a nice comment, Kelly Salnow. And Kelly, you know, I appreciate you a lot. Kelly made a scholarship dono for our Locals community, and people reached out, and we've got some new members. And so we're grateful for you being a part of our community, Kelly. I really appreciate that nice comment. You know, I think we're going through this together, honestly. You know, I feel like we learn a lot together. I learn by going through this with you. You know, I'm sort of absorbing the conversation as we're going through it. I'm watching the chat. I'm listening to you. We have our live streams for our members. And so it's a conversation. You know, it's kind of this organic thing that's happening here. And it wouldn't be possible without you. And I'm really grateful for the ability to do this here today, because it would be a lot less enjoyable to navigate this world alone. And so I think that it is important to clear the noise out of our lives. It's important to remember what's most important. Stay engaged, stay plugged in, stay energized, stay animated, because there is a lot of work to do. But also remember, you know, the important things: family, friends, your higher power, your passion for life. You know, all of these other things are important. And so we're trying to build a community. We're trying to wake people up. I'm very grateful for you, Kelly, for being here and for all the support. And we're just getting started. So we will continue on. Common Free is here. Says, hey, Rob, if I keep watching today, if I keep watching today, I'm going to betray my handle. Calm and Free. Off for a long run. Very long run. Good call. See you all in the morning. Good to see you, Calm and Free. Have a great run. That sounds pretty good. A run sounds good. Maybe I'll do that after this. Don't Be Hating says, mine is okay, but others are having issues with audio. Uh-oh. Is that still the case? Well, we'll take a look at that. Anyways, thank you for the great tips. Calm and Free, Kelly Salnow, Don't Be Hating in the house. And let's see what else is going on over on Twitter. We had a couple people in the chat. Who is here? We had a couple of these. Paul Mino is here. He says, it occurred to me, Rob, that you haven't done a walk and talk for quite a while. Any plans to resume? That's a good question. We haven't done a walk and talk in a while. It's gorgeous out. It's warming up a bit. Part of the reason we stopped the walk and talks is freezing in the mornings out, you know? So yeah, I think we can bring in walk and talks. Although I do like the morning live streams as well, because we get to it's live, you know, we get to hang out. But we can definitely intersperse some more of that stuff in, certainly. Says, after party on Locals and Telegram, don't let your memes be dreams. That's right. Tomorrow, it'll be Meme Friday. And good to see you, Paul. Shared this one. Says, the cat is trying to tell you something. If your cat, yeah. If you're watching the show here and your cat wrecks the screen, it's probably a Fed. Okay. That's an FBI cat right there. Probably a YouTube cat. Eating that screen, you know. So we also had James is asking if there's a mistrial. With this judge, no. Danny says if the Democrats win in 2024, I'm going off grid. It's not a bad idea. Rob, if the FBI wins by spying on the defense team, will that set a precedent? If so, how safe will lawyers be? Lawyers should be very concerned about that. If that is indeed something that's happening, of course, it feels like it is. We'll see what the judge says about it. It's going to be very interesting to follow this one. If they're doing it in these cases, are they doing it in other cases? They have to, right? Very gross. All right. And so that, my friends, was it for us over on Twitter, over on Rumble. We are going over to Locals for our after party. And so if you are a member, if you join on YouTube or on Locals, you get some extra content. We love that you join us. If you would like to do that, the place to go is watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where you can become a member. We do member-only morning streams, some additional content. Is a great community over there. You can also join up on YouTube and join us for most of that. The only thing that you want to do if you join up on YouTube is make sure you join the private Telegram group. And so on YouTube, there's a community tab on the channel. Just go over there. You'll find the link. It's a members-only post. Come and join the Telegram because that's where we're going to be in about 2 minutes. Also, we have our sponsors, of course, our friends over at Field of Greens. Great place to get your daily servings of fruits and vegetables. You'll feel healthier. You'll look better. You'll be energized. It's just a great thing to be healthy. And so check them out over at fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert at checkout before you leave. And also my former law firm, the R&R Law Group, although I'm no longer there, they're still kicking butt, doing great work over at the R&R Law Firm at 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com. I think I just saw a super chat come in from our friend Woods Precision Arms. He says, what the absolute F? How the heck can this judge be this obtuse? If I was defense, I would just rest now. No point continuing because the defense can't produce their case. It's disgusting. Yeah, I feel you on that one, Woods. I was pretty fired up today about that. Yeah, I agree. It's disgusting. It's really, really gross behavior. And that's what they're doing. And they're supporting it in writing, in their own motions. No, that's no problem at all. It's okay. That's the DOJ. I also want to say thank you to our mods and our meme smiths who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. Our friends Vienticus Prime, K Bean in the house. We got Just Cause. We got Playin Hooky, Arani Cole, Zulu. We got Geomancy, Zach Nichols, and our friend John Allen. Also want to shout out our friends Sleepy Dog Lee and Geegum over on Locals. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to come back tomorrow. Doesn't look like we'll have any new Trump updates in terms of an indictment. We'll see if there's anything else new to cover there. Of course, Proud Boys will be back in trial with some new witnesses. Should be a short day, but there will be a ton of other news to attend to. I'm sure of it. And so we will be back here. If you'd like to join us as a member, either on Locals or on YouTube, we'll see you in the morning. Otherwise, my friends, we will be right back here at the same time, same place to do it all again, because together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.